It's Friday. You know what it means. Joining me now, Michael Smerconish, host of CNN Smerconish, also a CNN political commentator. Michael, always wonderful to see you. Let's start with Harris's picks, and then I do want to spend some time talking big picture and talking about J.D. Vance in particular as well. We're both from PA. Is Josh Shapiro the guy for her? Is Mark Kelly the guy for her? These are the two names that have kind of floated to the top of my list, but I want to know what you think.
Yes and yes. I think she's got two solid choices in both Kelly and in Shapiro because it's been a phenomenal week for the vice president. Such a turnaround, Kasie, from the two of us a week ago today, talking about what I thought was a near flawless Republican National Convention. Donald Trump came out of that with a head of steam, leading in the national polls, leading in the battleground polls, and look at where we are now. But in the end, where can she move the needle in those 7 states? So you look at Kelly and you look at Shapiro, the margin that Donald Trump enjoyed before this whole change was larger in Arizona than it was in Pennsylvania. I think Josh Shapiro brings her the opportunity to put Pennsylvania back in the Democratic column. And I have to believe that behind closed doors right now, they are focus grouping and polling the bejesus out of how these two in particular move their respective states.
Yeah, very interesting. Michael, Harris, one of the reasons why Harris has had such a great week so far is because she does seem to be popping on social media for all the right reasons, while J.D. Vance, the Republican running mate, seems to be doing it for, many seem to think, the wrong ones. This soundbite has been making the rounds. You may have heard it, but just as a reminder, this was J.D. Vance with Tucker Carlson. Watch.
We're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. And it's just a basic fact. You look at Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, the entire future of the Democrats is controlled by people without children.
This prompted Jennifer Aniston to weigh in, someone who we do not hear from on political issues very often, but she has been public about her own struggle to have children. All I can say is, Mr. Vance, I pray your daughter is fortunate enough to bear children of her own one day. I hope she will not need to turn to IVF as a second option, because you're trying to take that away from her, too. These comments seem to have really broken through. How big of a problem do you think they are? What's your sort of overall way of looking at this?
I think it's not playing well in Mar-a-Lago. I don't know how it's playing in Middle America. I assume not well, but I'm sure it's not playing well in Mar-a-Lago because the last thing that former President Trump wants is to have J.D. Vance become a drag on the ticket when he's got other issues that he's got to deal with. There's also a tone question here that this brings to my mind in terms of how does the Trump campaign, and I think they're wrestling with this and so far coming to the wrong answer. How do they deal with Vice President Kamala Harris? What are they going to say about her? In my view, to say that she's a progressive from San Francisco and to regard her as the most liberal member of the United States Senate, that's all appropriate. That's all debatable. That's all fair game. To talk about her as a DEI hire and to say anything that smacks of misogyny or racism, I think is going to have enormous blowback. So they got to get their act together and decide now how they're going to handle her. And what I'm seeing in his Truth Social responses so far, meaning President Trump, tells me he's taking the wrong approach. He should have been more dignified. He should have come out of that convention as the victim that he was of an assassination attempt and continued to try and maintain that level of dignity.
So, Michael, I absolutely take your point. I mean, we've seen Trump on the stump once since this all unfolded, and he seemed to mostly stick to policy-based attacks against Harris. He did warn that he wasn't going to be nice. Do you think Trump himself is capable of doing what I'm sure Chris LaCivita and Susie Riles, who are running the campaign, want him to do, which is what you are suggesting? Do you think Trump the man can actually pull that off?
No. And the reason that I say probably not is because I think of the convention speech for the first 25 minutes, for the first 30 minutes or so of the convention speech. I thought it was really compelling, really convincing. He was recounting what it was like to be on the receiving end of that bullet. And then you could almost see him, not almost, you could see him deviate from the teleprompter, go off script as he so often does. He's very good at reading the crowd and knowing when he needs to enthuse his base, but that's also what gets him in trouble. And what Kamala Harris and Donald Trump both need to be considering now is that the primary and nomination process is over. She's no longer needing to worry about progressives, and she didn't have a fight anyway, and he's got his base. It's time now to think if they can move anybody who's a centrist, anybody who's an independent, or at least alter the enthusiasm of the party's respective bases.
Yeah, really interesting. All right, Michael Smerconish, thank you as always, my friend. Always wonderful to have you.
Thank you.
And remember, tune in tomorrow, 9 a.m. for Smerconish right here on CNN. I'm actually filling in for Chris Wallace right after that tomorrow as well, so I hope you'll stick around for that too.